countdown. Welcome to NFL Preseason Live Before Lock. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm joined today by Matt Gajewski, who Lofty recently dubbed the Preseason Pioneer. You can find him on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. And today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, which offers daily prop-based contests. While you're coming in, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when our shows go live. Keep up with all of our shows. Matt, I am excited to be doing my first NFL show of the year. I know you did a show with Lofty for the Hall of Fame game last week. I had to miss that one, but that was Showdown. This is a 2-game slate. Are you ready to get back into some classic NFL contests?
Yeah, it's been a month and a half off since we had the good old USFL, so I was able to kind of wet the whistle and play some classic there. But I'm excited for real live NFL football players we know and love. So it should be a fun stream. It's also our first one together. Somehow we worked here a whole year together and dodged each other on these streams. I have no idea how that's possible, but here we are. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, as I was telling you before the show, pretty funny. I didn't know if we had done a show together or not because I've seen so much of your content. So I'm excited to be doing a show with you finally. Yeah, let's wait, before we get into the content, I just have to ask, how do you feel about the nickname that Lofty gives you, the Preseason Pioneer?
I think it's hilarious. Lofty, good with those alliterations.
He is.
Think I might have to adopt that one.
Yeah, I think it's a good one for you. All right. So before we get into the actual players and talking about the different positions, I just want to hear a little bit about strategy for these preseason slates. So this is a 2-game slate where the highest projected player currently, just looking through Fantasy Cruncher, outside of defenses, is Patriots quarterback Bailey Zappi. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but he has a projection of 7.72 fantasy points. Is the highest score, and there's a bunch of players right behind him. So with players splitting time across the board, I have a couple questions on what you've found to be the most profitable approach in preseason DFS. So first of all, are you comfortable playing players against your defense, and how many?
Yeah, I definitely am. I essentially, when I'm using Fantasy Cruncher, take that portion of it off and bring it right up to the max, 6 against the defense. It's never actually going to give you that. And on FanDuel, you can't even do that. But correlations, they're essentially non-existent in this format. Even if you have a quarterback who throws a touchdown to a receiver and they only play a series or two, it's still pretty unlikely they'll end up in the optimal lineup. So you're always trying to balance correlations with playing time, which makes it really tricky overall. And you also have situations where maybe that player is only on the field for a series, but a backup on a team or even that player's own team will be playing an entire half later on in the game. So I'm not really worried a ton about correlations. When they happen in my lineups, great. When they don't, I'm not trying to force them in.
Okay, cool. So sort of similar to like Showdown, or I mean, that's how it is for me on like a 3-game NFL slate, even outside of preseason sometimes. But I imagine with preseasons, I mean, it's not even the quarterback they're playing isn't even playing the whole game. So the defense could get a pick six off the other quarterback. So yeah, that makes sense that correlation is largely out the window here. Second question that I had is, so the Stokastic Optimal, last I checked, left $500 on the table. Should we be trying to leave salary on the table to be different? And how much is too much or too little?
Yeah. So for salary, we don't even really have it. It's just every player costs the exact same. So no matter what your lineup's going to be, it's always going to be the same.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, then let's get right into it. Let's talk about some quarterbacks. We'll start with the Giants. Who do you think is, so you got Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, Davis Webb are the available quarterbacks. Are all three of them going to see time? Who's going to see the most time? What are you thinking about the Giants quarterbacks?
This is probably the most volatile situation out of all of the teams. Brian Dable comes in. He has no ties to Daniel Jones. He wasn't part of the regime that drafted him. So we are going to see Daniel Jones. It wasn't really clear how long Daniel Jones is going to be on the field, but he hasn't had the best camp based on all reports. I think we see at least a series or two out of him, maybe more. I wouldn't expect more than a quarter tops, but you're going to see some Daniel Jones, and then you're also going to see Tyrod Taylor and Davis Webb. But I do think Davis Webb is going to handle most of the second half here. Tyrod Taylor is a veteran. We don't really need to see what he has to offer, and his best skill set's going to kind of be mitigated here. A lot of these running quarterbacks you don't often see taking off in the preseason quite as much, just for the injury risk that they do run when they are taking off on the ground. So this is a really tough situation. If I was playing one of these guys, it would be Davis Webb. He's a player we've seen actually a lot in previous preseasons, and he's played pretty well there. He hasn't committed any turnovers last year. His completion percentage was up around 65%. And I think he's going to play most of the second half.
Okay. So here's what I think we're going to do. I'm going to go through all of the teams first and just get the lowdown on who you expect to play. And then I'm going to have you rank them at the end of going over them, just so we know, like, relative to the other teams, who you like best. Okay. Next up, Pats. Who's going to be playing for the Pats today? Who do you like?
Mac Jones is not expected to play. Bill Belichick didn't come out and say this, but New England has a great beat scene. Like, their beat reporters are awesome. And essentially all of them are in agreement that starters aren't playing tonight. Most of them, at least, for New England. So Mac Jones shouldn't be out there. Hoyer's another guy who's been in the NFL for 10 plus years, and he's a longtime vet. He was also injured in the early part of camp, and he's only practiced a few times. So there's upside for Bailey Zappi, a rookie out of Western Kentucky, to potentially play like 2+ quarters, 3+ quarters of this game. And he's the quarterback that projects the best, and it's just solely based on playing time. His skill set is a pure pocket passer, so you're not getting a rushing upside, but you are getting a lot of this game with Zappi.
Okay, nice. So Zappi, it sounds like, is your favorite of the group here.
Yeah, he would be number one right now.
All right, and then the Ravens. I imagine we're not going to see Lamar Jackson this game. Maybe I'm wrong. Who are we going to see for the Ravens at quarterback today?
No, you're absolutely right. We're not going to see him. Tyler Huntley, Brett Hundley, and Anthony Brown are on this roster. Right now they're carrying 4 quarterbacks. We'll see 3 tonight without Jackson playing. And I don't think we see a ton of Tyler Huntley, but expect Brett Hundley not to be confused with Huntley, and then Anthony Brown to handle most of the duties here. I think it is going to be close to 1/3 split apiece around these 3 guys. So this isn't the most enticing situation, but the one thing you can say about all of these signal callers, they all have mobility, and that's just kind of the Ravens offense. They're always going to target a backup that has mobility, so they don't have to drastically change the offense if Lamar were to go down. So I think you do have upside for one of them to maybe like sneak in a rushing touchdown. And these guys are middling in projection, but Hundley and Anthony Brown would probably be like my 4th and 5th quarterbacks if I were ranking them here.
Okay. So it sounds like they're quarterbacks who don't really project well, but maybe have high upside just because of that rushing touchdown possibility there. I mean, we don't have anybody projecting that well, so a rushing touchdown would go a long way. Would you agree with that the Ravens quarterbacks are a little bit more volatile?
Yeah, 100% agree.
Okay. And then finally, the Titans. Who do you like for the Titans today at quarterback?
This is a pretty good situation, I think. And Malik Willis is the player I'm ranking number 2 among quarterbacks. We don't have real clarity on Ryan Tannehill's status. I don't think he's going to play, but if he does, it's not going to be more than a series. Malik Willis is extremely mobile. We know him from the NFL draft. There was a lot of first-round hype. He ends up going in the 3rd round, played for Liberty, but he's extremely mobile. 944 yards and 878 yards in back-to-back seasons, and that all came on the ground. He's essentially going to be splitting this game with Logan Woodside, who's a longtime backup. And these guys are firmly battling for the backup job right now. There's a good chance Tennessee has to keep 3 quarterbacks just because they're not going to cut a 3rd round pick. But I think if Willis can play well enough, they will potentially cut Woodside. So we should see at least a half a Willis here and potential for a little bit more. I think he's number 2 behind Zappe, only narrowly because Zappe has a little bit of a higher projection in terms of playing time.
Okay, so of all quarterbacks then, all 4 teams, your top is Zappe, followed by Malik Willis. Who comes in the next 2 or 3 quarterbacks that you like?
Davis Webb would be 3rd, just narrowly, and that would be over the Baltimore signal callers, Brett Hundley and Anthony Brown.
Okay, and I just want to touch on a little. So Logan Woodside, I believe you said his name is. They're splitting the game. We expect them to split snaps. What do we know about Logan Woodside? Is he any good at all? Do we expect anything from him? Does he have a chance to be the top quarterback, I guess is my question.
He does. I think he's probably the next guy you talk about. He's a player that was playing in the AAF, so he comes from a lower level of competition, but he played well there. And he's actually stuck on the Titans roster for the last few years. He's been a long-time backup for this team. Tannehill's had good health, so we've never actually had to see him play. But he's more of a pocket passer than some of the other players down there like Anthony Brown and Brett Hundley. They're more mobile than Woodside, and I think they're going to play a similar amount of time, which is enough to be a deciding point for me, but it's close.
Okay. Anything else that you want to say about quarterbacks before we move on to running backs?
I think you could maybe, if you're playing some of the large GPPs, like there's a pretty big GPP tonight. And if you want to take a flyer on somebody, Daniel Jones is the most talented. We don't know how much he's going to play. Again, I would be surprised if it's more than a quarter, but he is rushing upside and he's easily the best player that's going to see the field. So I would think about maybe throwing flyers on him, but probably sticking with the top guys. I think Zappe and Malik Willis are far and away the best quarterbacks to play.
Okay. I saw Daniel Jones almost rush for like a 90-yard touchdown once. I don't remember how long it was exactly. You remember the one that I'm talking about, of course, where he was wide open to get a touchdown and just tripped. So maybe if he doesn't trip, if he just does that one play today, he could be the highest scoring quarterback. I guess he always has some upside, even in a quarter.
The most Daniel Jones play of all time.
Yeah, that was fun. And I believe I had a ton of Daniel Jones that day. So I didn't love it. That was a showdown slate. I think it was a Thursday night showdown slate. And I had all the Daniel Jones. So I was not a huge fan of that, but ended up, I think, binking a tournament anyway. So that was a fun one for me. Anyway, so we're going to move on to running backs. But before we do that, I want to tell you about the Stokastic NFL preseason DFS projections. So the NFL preseason officially here, which means we have projections. We're giving them to you for only $5 for a limited time only. So grab them now. You can find the link to claim your $5 preseason projections in the description below, or use promo code TUA, TUA at checkout. We've got a lot of preseason content coming out. So seems worth it to me to pay $5 to get projections for all game. Let me reread this. You can find the link. I don't know how long this lasts for. If this is a week, even if it's a week, I think $5 is a pretty damn good deal to get all of our preseason projections, because we've got a lot of preseason contests coming out. You and I are going to be doing a lot of preseason content. So I would definitely recommend using that promo code TUA to get our Stokastic preseason projections. I don't think you'll be disappointed. All right. Moving on to running backs, we'll start again with the Giants. Who are we expecting to see play today for the Giants, and who do we like?
A report just came out from them. Their beat reporter was talking about some players warming up. So it looks like the starters are going to play anywhere from a series to a quarter here. But Kadarius Toney was left at home, and we'll get to him a little later. But I'm imagining Saquon's a guy that comes out pretty early for them. So just a hit on the running back position for the Giants. I'm going to exclude Saquon. And then Matt Breida wasn't mentioned by name, but this beat reporter said the group that was working among the injured a couple days ago were left back at home to rehab. So I'm presuming that Matt Breida's also in that group because he's been working among the injured recently. That should leave three primary runners here: Antonio Williams, Gary Brightwell, and Jashaun Corbin. Antonio Williams has been a player that's received a lot of hype. He previously played with Buffalo, nearly made the roster there at one point. So he's a talented player. He's a little bit of a smaller back, played at Arizona. He's been pretty inefficient in the preseason. Like last year, he rushed 7 times for 17 yards. And then Jashaun Corbin's my favorite of these three. He's an undrafted free agent out of Florida State, but he's big, he's athletic. He went for nearly 900 yards rushing and caught 25 passes. So he's a player that does have a 3-down skill set, which is really important for preseason DFS. If you can find a back that's going to catch a few passes, and those are, of the easy variety, you get 3-4 targets out of the backfield. You're looking at 3-4 PPR points, which can be key here. So I think Corbin's probably the best back. They also have Sandro Platzgummer. He's just going to be a guy they use on special teams. He's a kick returner. So I don't think we see a ton of him in regular, normal 3-down work. Like last year, he played 21 total snaps, not including special teams.
Okay. Matt, I was all excited to do some football content and know the players again. After doing baseball, I mean, I know most of the baseball players, but football, I know just about every fantasy relevant player typically. So I was excited to get back into it. And you're just throwing names at me that I'm I have no idea who you're talking about right now. So it's good that we have you on the show doing the analysis instead of me. I'm just asking the questions. You know your stuff. Jashaun Corbin, was that the name of your favorite Giants running back?
Yes, Jashaun Corbin, former Florida State product. Some of you that play college football DFS probably know some of these names at least.
Yeah, of course. All right. So Pats, throw some more names at me that I don't know. Who do you like in the Pats backfield today?
The Pats backfield's actually pretty good to target because the starters aren't expected to play. Again, beat reporters around the industry are suggesting that. So right now, it doesn't look like Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson are going to play. James White retired today. He was hurt anyway. Ty Montgomery is a veteran. He's basically a pass catching specialist or a special teamer. I don't think we see much of him, which leaves Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris. These are 2 draft picks this year. Pierre Strong, he was drafted out of the 4th round, came out of South Dakota State. He's extremely athletic. The guy runs like a 4.4 40-yard dash, and he was over 1,600 yards there. He was banged up earlier in camp, so he's a player that New England hasn't gotten a good look at to this point, which makes me think he gets pretty good run here. The same goes for Kevin Harris, who was drafted in the 6th round out of South Carolina, another really productive player. And he's a guy that also has a good pass catching skill set, caught 21 balls at South Carolina. I think most of the work on the run game flows through these two. JJ Taylor is going to be more just like a scat back. And I really think he's vying for a roster spot at this point. So to me, when New England's considering keeping a 3rd and 4th back, I think they probably look more at their draft picks more than they look at JJ Taylor, who's been a practice squad caliber player for this team for multiple seasons now.
Okay. Matt, have you heard the rumors that the Patriots might be open to trading Damian Harris? I think it was just a beat reporter said this, so I don't think it was even came from the coach, but a beat reporter suggested that Damian Harris might be somebody that the Pats are looking to trade. Have you given any thought to who might benefit in the Patriots backfield, obviously other than Ramondre Stevenson? I think Ramondre Stevenson is the clear, he becomes an alpha dog if Damian Harris gets traded, but any other running backs that you see jumping that I should be grabbing in the 18th round of my best ball drafts?
Yeah, so I think part of the reason for that is Ty Montgomery's played really well in camp as the pass catching back. So if you're looking for someone to fill that James White role, I think Ty Montgomery can probably do 80% of what James White did on the field. And then I think that rumor really comes down to how Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris play. So for actionable takes, I think Pierre Strong is probably the guy you're looking at most as the 4th round draft pick. Generally 6th round picks like Kevin Harris, these are practice squad guys, but there is a chance he outperforms him. So this is a big game to watch tonight. If one of these guys really ascends the depth chart, I'd be comfortable taking an 18th round pick on one of these players in best ball, just the way New England has functioned in the past with these running backs coming out of nowhere.
All right. Yeah. I've been thinking about it. So either Ty Montgomery or I forget who you said
Pierre Strong.
Pierre Strong. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to start taking some flyers there because that'd be interesting. All right, moving on. Enough best ball. How about the Titans? Who are the Titans going to be playing at running back today? Who do you like in the backfield?
This is my second favorite backfield to target. So I like Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris the most. And then the Titans are pretty thin. They only have 6 running backs on the roster, excluding their fullback. Derrick Henry's not playing. Dontrell Hilliard's not playing. And then you have Hassan Haskins, 4th round draft pick, Trenton Cannon, who's a special teamer, like entirely special teams. I don't know if he plays more than 2 or 3 snaps during regular 3-down football, then Jordan Wilkins and Julius Chestnut. So there's a chance here we have just the backfield split between Haskins, Wilkins, and Chestnut, with Wilkins and Chestnut probably handling most of the work here in the second half, just because Hassan Haskins is a virtual lock to make this roster. He's basically profiles as a poor man's Derrick Henry, and he's going to be the Derrick Henry insurance here. Dontrell Hilliard's going to be more of your pass catching back when he's healthy. A guy I like a little bit more is Chestnut, because he is that undrafted free agent. He comes out at Sacred Heart. He's 6'1", 215, and ran a 4.5 40-yard dash. He has production, size, and athleticism. The only thing he didn't have coming out of school was good level of competition. So I think he gets a pretty good look tonight. Wilkins is a veteran with the NFL. He played a lot with the Colts in previous seasons. You know a little bit more what you have with him, but I think those are the 2 best backs to target, with Hassan Haskins coming right in behind them very slightly.
Who would you like there in best ball? Just because I'm playing so many best ball drafts right now. If Derrick Henry goes down, who do you think is the guy? You think it's Haskins?
Yes, it's Haskins is massive. He's 6'2", 228. Definitely not as athletic as Derrick Henry. He ran a 4.74 40-yard dash, but he's really good at forcing missed tackles, above average when you look at his college production. And he does have pretty good yards after contact. Haskins, I think, is going to be the Derrick Henry replacement if Henry goes down, with Dontrell Hilliard kind of being that pass catching back.
Okay, so you don't think that Dontrell Hilliard would take on much bigger workload necessarily, and Haskins would kind of move into that role and Hilliard would kind of stay where he is?
I think so.
Okay. I have not been taking anybody from the Ravens backfield outside of Derrick Henry. So that's probably, the Titans backfield. So that's probably something that I should start doing a little bit as I round out my drafts. I still got like 100 left, so plenty of time to take them. All right. Moving on to the Ravens. Who are we going to be seeing from the Ravens today? Anybody you like here?
This is the most crowded backfield we have today. So I don't have a ton of these guys. Mike Davis, Justice Hill, Tyler Beatty, Corey Clement, and then Nate McCrary are all playing today. So you've got a very crowded situation here. Mike Davis has been operating with a Lamar Jackson unit through much of camp just because of the injuries to Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So I'm not sure we see a ton of him, because right now he kind of is the Gus Edwards insurance, and we're not sure Gus Edwards is going to be ready for week 1. Justice Hill and Tyler Beatty are essentially carbon copies of each other. These are very small scat backs out of the backfield, which is why I kind of like playing them in GPPs, because of that pass catching upside. Then Corey Clement, Nate McCrary, these should be the guys that are just salting away the game in the fourth quarter. Not a ton of interest there. Clement's actually a little bit productive in his previous stops, played with Philly for a little bit, but there's been very little mention of him in camp. So if I'm focusing on GPPs with Baltimore, it's going to be Justice Hill and Beatty.
So it sounds like that pass catching upside for running backs is like extra valuable here, just because nobody scores that many points. So just catching 3 balls for 40 yards might be enough to make it into the winning lineup. Is that true? For
sure. And Beatty's a guy that caught 54 passes in his final season with Missouri. So that's kind of the reason he's on the field. Just that's never really been a big part of Baltimore's game to begin with. Now Lamar's not playing, so maybe Huntley or Brett Hundley throw the ball a little more to running backs. That remains to be seen, but I'm at least willing to include them in my player pool because of that upside.
Okay. So to help people out who are maybe need to like visualize kind of what you're targeting here, what's kind of a winning score in a preseason DFS? Maybe you don't, it's been so long, I guess, since we've had a 2-game slate that it might be difficult to answer this, but is it like in the range of like 50 fantasy points, or does it get up closer to like 90?
The higher scoring ones can get up to 90, but
okay,
like 70 points would be really good score.
Okay. So it's pretty low. Like you're not going to get much out of any play, which makes sense because everybody's playing half the game. So you're expecting half or less than the normal production. Interesting. So that's kind of what people have to keep in mind. And a running back, like, so a running back who is the minimum, I guess pricing doesn't really matter. So do you need 10 points out of your running backs?
10 points is great, but just for like reference, the average score for a running back is right around 6 points, like across the last 5 preseasons. So it's pretty bad. That's in like winning lineups too. Like the raw average for running back, any running back in the preseason is 3.5 points. But I mean, that also includes like Saquon Barkley, who might play a series,
Yep.
So it's super volatile.
But the average for a winning team's running back is like 6 points. 6 fantasy points?
There's a huge standard deviation on this, though.
Okay. All right.
There's like a touchdown gets you there, but if you have a slate where like a short slate, 2-game slate like we have today, where running back doesn't score, that's still unlikely. Like you could definitely get by with 6 points.
Yeah. I guess even on a 2-game slate, it is possible that no running back score. Interesting. All right. And finally, can you rank them for me? Just give me like your top 5 running backs, your top 5 favorite running backs on this slate.
Yeah, it's funny. They're going to come from 2 teams. Pierre Strong's number 1, and then behind him, Kevin Harris is number 2. The 3 backs from the Titans are going to come in 3, 4, and 5. So that's Julius Chestnut, Jordan Wilkins, and Hassan Haskins. You guys probably think it's crazy to rank 3 running backs from one team in the top 5, but if that's because the playing time is narrowest for those backfields, and it's going to be unpredictable. Like I don't want to play all 3 of them in the same lineup. I'll take 2 max, but just with how volatile it is, you probably want to spread your chips around to all 3 if you're playing a lot of lineups tonight.
Okay, so 2 max running backs from a team. Is that true for all teams, I assume?
That's a rule for me right now, unless you. Okay. I can't even think of a circumstance where I would change that.
Yeah, I mean I think that rule makes sense to me. Obviously, you can maybe get more unique by playing 3, but it seems like you're going to be plenty unique anyway. So I don't think you really need to go there. I think 2 seems like a good rule in general. Okay, yeah. Anything else that you want to say about running backs here?
No, not really. Just in terms of like unique rostership. Unlike like a 2-game slate, you think, okay, it's a really limited player pool, but you have to remember like there's 3 full units for each of these teams. So there's so many players to work with, even though it's a 2-game slate. I would just like maybe be cognizant of your QBs and your defenses, but outside of that, like playing receivers and running backs, you'll probably run into unique lineups just using Fantasy Cruncher and having a little bit of randomness.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the player pool, even though it's a 2-game slate, is just so huge because everybody's playing limited.
Yeah, like I think there's 5 quarterbacks in play, and you can extend that to a few more if you want to include like Daniel Jones in there.
Right. Yeah. If you want to get really weird. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Well, before we move on to wide receivers, let me tell you about our sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks offers daily prop-based contests. You can use the promo code AWESEMO, that's AWESEMO, for a $100 first match deposit bonus if you are not yet on PrizePicks. PrizePicks has no sharks. Optimizers cannot be used on PrizePicks, and you can't mass enter, so you don't have to worry about all of the pros in your contests. It's just you against a bunch of average Joes who aren't optimizing. So it's a little bit easier. You create 5-player lineups that can net up to 10x your entry fee. Use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sport entries. Click the link in the video description below to head to prizepicks.com or download the PrizePicks app in the App Store or on Google Play. All right, let's move on to wide receivers. We'll start once again with the Giants. Who's playing? Who do you like?
This is one of the least attractive situations tonight. You basically have 2 really narrow situations and then 2 really wide situations. The Giants are one of the wide situations. Players that aren't going to be out there: Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard, David Sills, and Robert Foster. Austin Perel as well. Looks like he's not going to be out there. Even with those players out of the lineup, you still have 9 healthy receivers. From there, Kenny Golladay, Wan'Dale Robinson. The starters are expected to play a series or 2. Wan'Dale could get a little extra time just because he's a rookie. And then from there, it's going to go right to Richie James, Colin Johnson, CJ Board, Darius Sladen. That's the sweet spot I would focus on, with a preference towards Colin Johnson and Darius Sladen. Colin Johnson's a player that's produced with previous teams, previously on Jacksonville. Darius Sladen, we know what he already did with the Giants, but again, this is a new regime that came in. Darius Slayton's been firmly working with the third stringers, and he's been rumored to be a trade candidate. So I think they're just going to let him run and hopefully get some trade bait, see what they can get out of Darius Slayton if he hits the free market. The reason I'm a little hesitant with CJ Board is he's been banged up in practice. Now he's a bubble roster guy. Like, he has to get out there and tough through it. Otherwise there's going to be no chance he makes the roster. So I think he plays and he projects well because he's actually played in previous preseasons and produced when he's been on the field. But I am a little hesitant with CJ Board.
Okay. We got a couple of super chats that I want to hit on because I read them and I misread them before and thought that we had already covered one. But first, I just didn't understand this. So Ryan Nelson says 2018 Texas stack with Lil Jordan and Johnson. What does that mean? Is that Lil Jordan Humphrey?
Yeah, he went to Texas. So
okay,
that's what he's referencing. I like Lil Jordan Humphrey tonight. I think he's a solid play. We'll get to him
with Johnson.
What's that?
He says a stack with Johnson. That's what he's suggesting. I don't know who that
is. He plays on New England. They don't have a quarterback named Johnson, so I don't know about that.
Is there another Texas player named Johnson?
Colin Johnson, yes. Colin Johnson on New. I'm guessing that's who he's talking about. Those. Okay, I get it now. I was thinking the quarterback receiver stack. He's talking about just full Texas Longhorn stack.
Okay.
Those two receivers are both big bodied, like possession, touchdown scoring receivers too. I like them both.
Yeah. So you like them both. Okay. So this is a stack that actually could make sense today. If you're a Texas fan, go ahead and play it. And then Rosso Music asked a question. I thought we'd answer this one, but I misread it. So he asked, would you play 3 running backs in one lineup? So not 3 running backs from the same team, but 3 running backs just as far as your roster construction. Would you play 3 running backs in the same lineup?
Yeah, I think you should be focusing your build on that. You can go 4 wide receivers if you want, but just overall, I guess I can just read this out. It's probably fine. When you look at the average score in the preseason over the last 5 years from these positions, defense is the highest score, and that's by 2.5 points. That's largely because defense is on the field for the entire game. They're the only guaranteed position to play 4 quarters. That matters more for showdown. From there, kickers are next. That's a showdown. Now, when we get to the other skill position players, quarterback is the 3rd highest scorer on average. They score about 1.5 points more than running backs, who score about 0.5 point more than receivers, who score about 1 point more than tight ends. So in that hierarchy, quarterbacks score the most, followed by running backs, followed by receivers, followed by tight ends. So I think you should be prioritizing running backs over receivers when it makes sense, unless there's a super narrow situation, which we don't have a ton of tonight. So I am prioritizing the 3 running back build.
Okay. And that's so, I mean, like in best ball, people draft, at least some people advocate drafting a ton of wide receivers because they're more volatile. So is there any, do you think that's true that wide receivers are more volatile in preseason, or are running backs just as volatile? So it doesn't really matter that much, and you'd just rather take the higher projected?
I think there's a little more volatility with receivers just because usually teams carry more of them than running backs. And a lot of times at the end of games, like, this is coaching specific a little bit, but some teams that don't care about the preseason and they'll spend the entire 4th quarter just like running the ball to get out of there. So sometimes you have value that way, but that's not always the case. And it's sort of a situational evaluation you need to do with all these teams.
Okay. All right. Moving on to the Pats now. We haven't talked about the Pats receivers yet. Who's going to play? Who do you like?
The Pats are a great spot for receivers because they're only carrying 10 of them on their roster. Some of them are hurt and others just aren't expected to play because they're starters. So we're allegedly not going to see Jacoby Myers, Devontae Parker, or Kendrick Bourne. That's just beat reporters speculating they're not going to play the starters, which I think is true. Then you have Matthew Slater on the roster, who just is a pure special teamer. Didn't play at all last year. All he does is special teams. So that leaves only a couple of receivers we can actually play. Nelson Aguilar, their 2nd round draft pick, Tyquan Thornton, Trey Nixon, Christian Wilkerson, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Josh Hammond. 2 players in particular I'm really trying to get to tonight are Christian Wilkerson and Lil Jordan Humphrey. Wilkerson's actually a really talented player. Last year, he caught 13 of 15 targets for almost 150 yards, but their receiver room is just so deep. So he's usually like that first receiver that gets caught, but he plays a ton of snaps. Last year, 32 snaps, 39 snaps, 48 snaps, and that excludes special teams. Those are just raw wide receiver snaps. All reports in camp are also positive about him right now. So I think he's a guy you can look to. Lil Jordan Humphrey kind of occupies a similar role. He was over 30 snaps in 2 preseason games last year. He's also big. He's 6'4", 225 pounds. So if they throw it up in the end zone, he's someone that could come down with a touchdown. Touchdowns are really rare for receivers in the preseason. And then I think you can also include Tyquan Thornton just because he's the 2nd round pick. They need to evaluate him and see what they have. He's essentially like a carbon copy of Nelson Aguilar skill set wise, but I think he's a little better. And if they want to cut or trade Aguilar, which have been the rumors, they need to see what they have from Tyquan. Trey Nixon's kind of a guy in between who's received hype, and I think you could also get to. So I'm really honing in on those four. Again, they're Tyquan Thornton, Trey Nixon, Christian Wilkerson, Lil Jordan Humphrey. In most of your lineups, I would try to get to at least one, and I think you can play two of them.
Okay. You mentioned Nelson Aguilar as a guy that you expect to see some snaps. Do you think there's a world in which he doesn't play at all? I mean, he's a veteran. We kind of know who Nelson Aguilar is at this point, don't we?
We do. And I think the reason why is because the speculation out of New England camp is that they're going to try to trade him. And if they can't, they're going to cut him.
Okay.
And I think that's probably because Aguilar, skill set, he's a fast receiver. He's used a lot downfield, which Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker, and Jacoby Myers are not. They drafted Tyquan Thornton for the exact same skill set. Tyquan Thornton ran a 4.2 140-yard dash coming out of Baylor. I think they're just trying to, get the new guard in. Aguilar hasn't been able to really produce for them.
Okay. So far, as a general rule, not a huge fan of the Giants receiving core. Definitely interested in the Pats more condensed receiving core.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. All right. What about the Titans? Which bucket do they fall into? You said there's one of each. Do you like the Titans receivers today?
They're similar to the Giants where they're going to have a ton of dudes active. They should have 10 receivers on the field today. And the only players they're missing are Robert Woods, who continues to rehab his ACL, and Cody Hollister. That leaves, I'll go through the laundry list of names, but it's Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Racey McMath, Kyle Phillips, Dez Fitzpatrick, Josh Malone, Terry Godwin, Reggie Roberson Jr., Marvin Kinsey, and Brandon Lewis. So they have 10 receivers, and New England, just by comparison, has 6. Unless it's a crazy GPP, I'm going to be focusing my attention on New England, and then Baltimore's kind of in the same realm there. If you want to target some of these guys, I would look to the young players who are battling for roster spots. That's going to be Racey McMath. He's a burner out of LSU. Kyle Phillips, he's a rookie this year who's played really well out of UCLA. And Dez Fitzpatrick, he's a second-year player out of Louisville. Those are the 3 I would try to get to if you do get to this team. But this is a really tough situation with how many dudes they just have active.
Do you see any world in which they want to play Treylon Burks just because he's been so bad in the preseason that they need to get him like running the right direction? I mean, all the rumors are like he's playing with the third stringers because he can't run the routes and he's just not been good in the preseason. I don't know if you buy those. Do you think there's any world in which they play him just to kind of try to get him right?
I do think he plays, but I think he's probably going to be out there for a purpose, like with Tannehill or Willis at the worst case scenario. But he's still a guy they need this year. Like they're not counting on Racey McMath, Kyle Phillips, or Dez Fitzpatrick. So to kind of parallel this to last week, you saw the Jaguars, like Laquan Treadwell. Don't compare him talent wise to Laquan Treadwell. I'm not doing that, but Laquan Treadwell is a guy that was guaranteed to make the Jaguars roster, basically. Burks is kind of the same way. So when these players that are roster locks are on the field, I do think when they play, they're going to be out there for a destined purpose. Get out there, play your 15 to 20 snaps, and then get off the field. I don't think they're going to have Burks out there when they're like trying to evaluate Jordan Wilkins versus Julius Chestnut, if that makes sense.
Yep, that makes total sense. You don't need to see what you have in him because you're not going to be cutting Treylon Burks.
A great parallel last year is Rondale Moore, I think, who we saw used a little bit early on, and then he'd come off the field, which, can be useful for GPPs as well. If Treylon Burks is a guy they want to see, particularly with a ball in his hands, maybe he plays 15 snaps, but maybe gets 15 targets. And then a guy like, Reggie Roberson plays 45 snaps, but half of them are blocking. Some of them are a little more useful than others. So I think you can look to Burks and GPPs, but I'm still trying to focus my attention to the very narrow New England and Baltimore receiving cores.
Okay. Just sticking on Treylon Burks for 1 second. Do you have any opinion on these rumors? Like, is this a situation like we had last year with Jamar Chase, where it's just like it's noise and he's going to be great? Or is this, do you have concerns? Should I be moving him back in my best ball rankings because none of the reports are good out of camp?
I think it's not like Chase, Chase dealing with drops. That's something that's highly fixable. With Burks, it's been like conditioning issues, just poor play on the field. And there were concerns with him route running wise coming out of Arkansas. So I think there's probably a little more ground to them, but at the same time, like they can't go into the season with Robert Woods, Nick Westbrook-Akine, and then some combination of Racey McMath and Kyle Phillips as their top 3 receivers. It's just going to be a recipe for disaster if they do that. They need to get Burks out there as quickly as possible and acclimated. So I think it's still okay to take Burks in best ball. He should be getting volume.
Okay, good. Good to hear because I have a lot of Treylon Burks. All right. So the Ravens, you say that they are the other team that you'd like targeting here, more of a condensed receiving core. Who do you like for the Ravens tonight?
Yeah, the Ravens are kind of nice. You never want to root for injury, but they have quite a few of them at receiver right now. So just running through this, players that have missed practice in the last 2 days: Rashad Bateman, James Prochet, Devin Duvernay, Slade Bolden, Devin Williams, and Bailey Gaither. I'd be surprised if any of those top three play. And then unfortunately for Bolden, Williams, and Gaither, they've been out of practice most recently. So we're talking about 2 days rest for them, which would make them a long shot to get back. That leaves just 6 healthy receivers, the exact same as the New England Patriots. Those players are Tylan Wallace, Jalen Moore, Shamar Bridges, Benjamin Victor, Mekhi Polk, and Raleigh Webb. Of that group, I think the 2 most interesting are Jalen Moore and Shamar Bridges. Bridges is a player that's received immense hype from beat reporters out of the preseason, especially like the early parts of training camp. He was a UDFA that came out of Fort Valley State, and he only caught 28 passes for 292 yards in his last 4 games there. But like beat reporter Jeff Zrebick, who's a highly regarded beat reporter, said that Jalen Moore and Bridges are going to be battling for this wide receiver 5 role. So I think they are players that are going to get a good long look tonight. Bridges in particular is interesting to me. The other player that's kind of interesting is Benjamin Victor, because he's also gotten some snaps up with that Lamar Jackson group because of the injuries to Prochet, Duvernay, and Bateman. To me, it makes sense to play those 3 guys with Tyler Huntley and then probably a little bit with Brett Hundley tonight as well. Then if you're diving into the depths of this team, which I think you probably should, fourth quarter, Mekhi Polk, a UDFA out of Mississippi State, caught 100 passes last year, more than 100 passes. And then Raleigh Webb, he's a UDFA out of Citadel. He was just over 500 yards last year. I am including both those guys in my player pool, and I have plenty of them just because of the narrow target competition they'll be playing alongside tonight.
Nice. It's really nice to hear the name Bailey Gaither. I forgot that he had signed with the Ravens, even if he's not playing tonight. Good to hear of these USFL guys making it to the NFL. All right, so I'll leave it up to you how you want to do this. Could you give me like either rank your top 10 or just like give me like 10 receivers, or remind me 10 receivers who like are 10 of your favorites to play tonight?
All right, I think you should be playing at least one Raven and at least one Patriot. I think for the Ravens, you're looking at Shamar Bridges, Benjamin Victor, Jalen Moore, and Mekhi Polk. If you're going to the Patriot side of things, which again, I think you should be looking at Christian Wilkerson, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Trey Nixon, and Tyquan Thornton. From there, we'll leave 2 spots for the last 2 teams. For the Giants, I like Colin Johnson. For the Titans, this is the worst receiving unit to target, in my opinion. I would be going Kyle Phillips. A few ancillary names for the Giants. I think you could also get to Colin Johnson or Wandale and GPPs.
Okay, so Wandale, you think is going to play tonight?
I think he's going to play a little bit. I think he's going to receive that Treylon Burks kind of role where he doesn't have a ton of snaps, but they're going to get the ball in his hands when he's out there, especially because they need to see if he's the long-term replacement for Sterling Shepard, who won't play tonight. But at some point, Sterling coming off the Achilles at his age, they're going to need to replace him. And Wandale kind of has that same profile.
Okay, nice. Anything else you want to say about wide receivers generally before we move on?
Again, just to rehash this, I'm trying to get more running backs in the flex than wide receiver, but certainly not forcing running backs in. If wide receiver gets there, then they get there. Okay.
All right. Well, we're going to talk tight ends, but first I want to tell you about our best ball draft kit. Our best ball draft kit is live for the 2022 season for only $69.99 this season. Get access to our best ball unlimited package, which includes best ball and season long fantasy football rankings, underdog daily draft rankings, our best ball stacking guide, cheat sheets, premium articles, and more. If you don't want to pay that price, we have good news. You can get all of this 100% free when you sign up and make your first deposit with Underdog Fantasy. Even better, Underdog will match that first deposit up to $100. So click the link in the video description below or use promo code Stochastic to claim this exclusive offer now. Again, that's promo code Stokastic, Stokastic, to claim this offer. And one thing that it doesn't say here, but I love that you can actually export a CSV of our best ball rankings, and they're not the most commonly used best ball rankings. So you can just naturally get different by using the Stokastic best ball rankings. I find it really useful. There are players that are like way different than ADP, and I find that really helpful to see where we're different. You can find a little bit of edge by using the Stokastic CSV, uploading that to best ball, or sorry, to Underdog. It's really, really useful to find a little edge there. So I highly recommend the best ball draft kit at Stokastic as a way to get a little bit different, because it's not all that used in best ball. All right, let's move on to tight ends, and we'll start once again with the Giants. Who are you expecting to play tonight, and who do you like?
This is kind of like receiver where you don't want to just like leave out teams entirely. We want to at least talk about them. But there are two clear paths to playing time tonight at the tight end position, and New York's not one of them. Ricky Seals-Jones isn't going to play here for this team, but even with his injury, you still have Daniel Bellinger, Chris Myarick, Jordan Akins, Austin Allen, and Jeremiah Hall, who's kind of like a hybrid fullback, H-back type. That's 5 players that could receive targets, and that means snaps are probably going to be split between them, especially when they're a team that's generally using one tight end on the field at a time. So if I'm getting anyone here, it's Bellinger, just the production he had coming out of college. He's still a rookie, so he's probably going to get some snaps tonight. But again, the Giants scrimmage last week, and Bellinger played 21 of 31 snaps with the first team. So, like, how much do they want their first team tight end out there, even though he's a rookie? So to me, it's Bellinger or bust with this team, and more likely than not, I'm not going to be getting there.
Okay, it's good to hear. I've been reading the reports of Bellinger being their number 1 tight end, and I've been drafting him in the last round of so many best ball drafts. Do you believe the hype at all? Do you think that he's worth having on a best ball team, or is he just a rookie tight end? And why would you ever draft a rookie tight end? What's your do you have a stance there?
I like Bellinger. He's a solid player coming out of San Diego State, and that was a really run heavy offense. So the production he had as a receiver is really eye opening there. And then they just don't have anyone else. Like Ricky Seals-Jones, it's kind of a failed commodity. We actually know what we have with him. Jordan Akins, maybe he's been really quiet during camp. So I like Bellinger. I think he's a solid pick in best ball very late, especially with your Giant stacks.
Nice. Yeah, I've been drafting a lot of him. Sometimes with Giant stacks, even sometimes not. I'm probably taking too much risk, but he's the number 1 receiver. We'll see what we have there, but probably not tonight. You're probably not going to be playing any Bellinger tonight.
Or do you think you might? Any Bellinger myself. Okay.
No Bellinger tonight, just unlikely to play all that much as the TE1, even though he is a rookie. Okay. What about the Patriots? Do you like any Patriots tight ends tonight? Who do you think is going to play?
This could be an awesome situation. So again, no starters. We're not going to see Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith. Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene each missed practice on the 9th, which was 2 days ago. Matt Soko might play every single snap tonight. And we actually saw this with the Patriots last year. There was a game where Devin Asiasi himself played 52 snaps, actually played 49 in back-to-back games as the team's really their only active tight end. He still didn't play very well in them, but again, it's the tight end position. We have to play one. Even if he catches 2 targets for 36 yards or something like that, that's fantastic. And we have an extremely narrow group here of targets. So Soko for sure should be in there.
Okay, so Soko for the Patriots.
I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I could be saying it wrong. Soko.
How's it spelled?
Sokol.
I feel like I've seen that name before. Yeah, Sokol.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. All right. We'll see if anybody else wants to correct us on the pronunciation. That sounds right to me, though. So we're high on Sokol today as a high upside, potentially playing most of the game, kind of a tight end. And as you referenced, I mean, tight end is the kind of position like I sometimes with catchers on baseball slates, on like a 2-game slate, I'll be like, well, I'll boost up some of the guys who don't project well, because I'm like, well, 3 fantasy points might be enough from a tight end, from a catcher. And it sounds like tight ends are kind of the same way. Like you don't have high expectations from your tight end, but like a tight end who scores 3 or 4 fantasy points might be like the optimal.
For sure. Two catches, 20 yards, bank it. That take that all day. If they score a touchdown, you're winning for sure. You're cashing a GPP.
All right. It's good to hear. Interesting. Okay. So we like Sokol tonight. Moving on though, any Titans you like at tight end?
This is another one that's a little difficult to get to at tight end. Hooper's probably not going to play, but we don't know for sure. And then Jeff Swim's kind of in the same boat. He didn't play last preseason, but these guys might play a couple snaps here and there, like last year, Hooper played 5 snaps in the preseason. And with Tannehill maybe playing a little bit, you could see them out there just briefly. But even with that said, you still have 3 tight ends that are going to be playing in Chigo Okonkwo, Briley Moore, and Thomas Odukoya. Those players have varying degrees of receiving upside. Okonkwo, I think, is the best. He's super athletic. He's a big tight end, and he was a 4th-round draft pick for this team, played with Maryland last year. He's been working a lot with Malik Willis, so I think Okonkwo is solid. Briley Moore is somebody you could look to as well. He's gotten a little bit of hype, but he's been mostly working with Woodside, so I think you have Okonkwo just a little bit ahead of him. And then Odukoya, he's more of a blocker than anything else. He never caught more than 13 balls in any season with Eastern Michigan, so I would focus on Okonkwo here.
Okay. Sounds good. And then finally, tell me your thoughts on Ravens tight ends before I ask you to rank them.
I like the Ravens tight ends just because you're not going to see Andrews. Nick Boyle is still working back from an injury. He said he wanted to play, but I highly doubt Harbaugh lets him play. And then Charlie Kohler has a sports hernia. He's out. So you're left with just Josh Oliver, Isaiah Likely, and Tony Poljan. These guys have all been working a little bit up with like the Lamar Jackson group. I think Likely is the most interesting just because of his receiving upside, and he's a 4th-round rookie. He caught 59 balls for 912 yards with Coastal Carolina last year. All these guys have pretty good receiving upside, so I think you can mix and match them. But this is the second best tight end situation, in my opinion, right now, behind New England with Soko.
So you would say that Likely is the most likely to have a good game here?
That's a good one, yes.
I almost went with probable. I decided, am I going to make the joke and just do probable instead of likely just to throw people off? Yeah, no, not a good joke. Anyway, let's rank our tight ends here. We got a lot of options here. Actually, not that many great options at tight end. But sounds like is Sokol, is he your number 1 tight end? How do you like? Are there 5 tight ends who you think are in your player pool worth playing?
Yeah, if I actually like, I think tight end's a little more open to because it's so volatile. Sokol's 1 right now, just the available playing time. 2 for me is going to be Likely. 3 would be Tony Poljan. He's just a pretty big receiving threat there. I think you can certainly get to him. And then looking at the Titans tight ends, I think is fine here as well, with Chigo Okonkwo being 4. Briley Moore, I guess, would be 5, but I prefer Okonkwo.
All right, that's a good list. And now we're moving on to last but certainly not least. Unfortunately, we can only play 1 defense today. We can't play 2 defenses like in Showdown, unless you are playing Showdown. I guess let's touch on that. I didn't see any major Showdown contests that I wanted to play, so I didn't plan on talking a lot of Showdown here. But, they filled? Oh, so there were actually big Showdown contests?
They were really big for Hall of Fame, but that was standalone. They were decent size, nothing too crazy, but they filled at like 3 p.m. today.
Okay. I think I probably looked after that because I was trying to decide, do I need to be talking Showdown here too? Because if there was a 50K to first kind of contest, I was thinking it might be worth touching on some of that stuff. But so people in Showdown, would you just start with 2 defenses? Like, is that the clear spot to go to defenses in Showdown?
100%. Every lineup.
Every lineup, you start with 2 defenses?
Like, dude, it's the biggest edge, I think, in all of preseason DFS, unless you're playing Snake Showdown. Last week, the 2 defenses were right around 50%, give or take, depending on your field size and your buy-in level. Obviously, far more owned in the higher stake stuff. But if you're playing like the flagship on DraftKings, you're getting 50% on defenses. And I think it's probably the biggest edge in preseason DFS. Kickers should be highly owned too, but people don't play them as much.
So you say you're getting 50% owned defenses and they should be 100%. Is that what you're saying?
Probably not exactly 100, but
okay. But 50% is too low.
They're the only position that's guaranteed to score or play the entire game. They score 2.5 points more on average than the second highest scoring position, which is kicker, which is the biggest gap between positions. And you're playing against all these bad quarterbacks. Like you get Logan Woodside and Brett Hundley. The turnovers, they're like ramped up in these preseason games because the level of play is so bad.
And then, so if you're playing 2 of them, are you starting with the kicker in the captain spot?
I think you can play kicker and captain for sure. The reason you have to watch kickers is there's battles with some of these teams. So certain teams, you have viable kickers, some you don't. Like the Ravens tonight, you can play Justin Tucker without a doubt. He's awesome. He's the only kicker on the roster. But then New England has 2 kickers. I don't want either of them in any lineups. So that's a little situation dependent, but if you have a kicker there, I think you can for sure. You can also captain defense as well. Again, highest scoring position on average. And that is not like they're not immune to ceiling performances either. You get really solid scores out of defenses. So I usually am trying to get kickers and defenses into my lineup, captain them when it makes sense, and then focus on the narrow position groups for the teams on that particular slate, whatever they may be, sometimes quarterback, sometimes running back.
Okay. I think I misspoke. I said kickers at captain. I meant defense at captain. But it sounds like you have some interest. Either one you could do.
Yeah, you could play. You could, like tonight, you could play Justin Tucker at captain and feel very good about your lineup.
Okay. And if you were playing, if you were the kind of sicko who plays cash games for preseason in NFL, you would start with 2 defenses, obviously. Would you also start with 2 kickers, or is that too far?
Yes, as long as there wasn't like a quarterback standout.
Okay, interesting. I will not be playing any cash preseason. I'll probably play some GPPs going forward. I did not play tonight, unfortunately, but I'm interested. This all sounds really interesting. Hearing you talk about it, I'm like, this sounds like there is probably some edge here, probably a lot of variance. But anyway, before we move on, let's talk about these defenses. What do you like? What do you dislike? Let's just talk about them as a whole, because you don't really need to. I mean, or we could talk about. Do you have anything to say in particular about the Giants defense, the Pats defense? Are you expecting like good defenses to be put out there? How are you feeling about the defenses today?
No, I'm not. I usually just let the projections take care of this. It's extremely volatile. Like there are some other projection sources in the industry that just straight up put the same score for every defense. Won't say which one. You can find that yourself around the industry. Ours are based on Vegas totals and spreads. So to us, the best game to target defenses is in the Tennessee-Baltimore game, just because the total's lower there. Baltimore is the team that's favored. I like getting their defense a lot. They actually try in preseason games. They have something ridiculous like a 20-0 record in their last 4 preseasons. That stat isn't exact, but it's ridiculous. Like they haven't lost a preseason game in like 5 years, maybe since I was in college. It's absolutely ridiculous. So they try, but then from there, I'm trying to make like little tweaks based on, who I think is going to be owned. But at the end of the day, I want close, especially on a slate with 4 teams here. I want close to 25% of all these defenses because of the volatility.
Okay, so you're splitting it up pretty evenly. You're not trying to like go all in on one defenses versus another.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And circling back to, we talked about this at the beginning of the show, but for anybody who joined late, you are setting it in Fantasy Cruncher. You will play the max number of players against your defense. That's not a concern for you, the correlation of playing players against your defense at all.
Yeah, don't care about that.
Okay. All right. Well, then we have covered defenses pretty well. Anything else you want to say about defensive strategy here? I
don't think so.
Okay. We got a question from David Tonks. Any Tylan Wallace love today? I don't remember what you said about Tylan Wallace. Do you have any interest there?
I like Tylan Wallace. The only issue I have with him is I think he probably comes off the field before some of those guys that are battling for a roster spot. Tylan Wallace is making this team for sure, without a doubt. And Baltimore's already really banged up in their receiver core. I don't know how much they want to get their better players that are actually on the team out there tonight. So I think you could definitely play them, but I would rather play Bridges or more some of the other players that are a little deeper on the Ravens. Okay.
Works for me. Anything else that you want to say? Any final thoughts on this slate in general, strategy, anything else that we have not already talked about that you would like to talk about? Or Mark Morrow asks, any picks on which teams actually win today? Floor is yours. You can answer his question, or you can his question about who's going to win today, or just general thoughts.
We got to say Baltimore, don't we?
That's right. That's pretty obvious.
They got to keep their streak alive. From there, I would guess New York, just because you're going to see a little bit of Daniel Jones in the starters, and they're going to be full evaluation. Whereas on the other side, New England's going to be trotting out backups really across the board. So you just might get a little more talent from the New York Giants side. My straight up picks will be Baltimore. They're going to keep their streak alive, whatever it is, in New York. Brian Daboll's got to see what he has with some of the players on the field. But like Darius Sladen's going to play a lot of this game. He's a good player.
Darius Sladen, you think is going to play a lot of this game?
Yeah, because they're trying to get rid of him.
Yeah, I suppose. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, does anybody have any other questions? I feel like we've got a couple minutes left before we close out. I've just been, I thought we were going to go over, and now we finished a couple minutes early. So if anybody has any questions, I am happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can close out a couple minutes early. Are your lineups finalized, Matt?
They are right now. I'm hunting for overlay. We didn't have any late news. Sometimes you get late news. That's something just I maybe like briefly mention. Make sure you keep your ear to the ground on Twitter for these contests. Today we were pretty lucky, so just monitor for the future.
Mac Jones won't play. Got that notification. I think that's in line with what you said. Haskins or Chestnut? Mitchell Tyler asks.
I prefer Chestnut. I think he salts away the game a little more than Haskins, but it's real close.
Cole asks, any thoughts on Thornton?
Like Thornton. He's the burner for New England that should be replacing Aguilar.
Oh, right. Baldy in the Oaf asks, how much kicker should I have in a 20 max on DK? Is 80% okay? I assume he's obviously talking showdown.
Yeah, that's right around where I am.
All right. All right. Well, I think we are good to go, guys. Before you take off, please give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Matt and I will be back tomorrow. We don't have any more shows tonight, but Matt and I will be back tomorrow to talk more preseason NFL. Hopefully I'll actually be able to play that slate along with the rest of you. I did not get a chance to enter today, but I'm excited. I'm excited to play some preseason NFL. Matt, any final words?
I'm pumped for tomorrow. It's going to be the wild, wild west. We got 5 games. Make sure you guys come back for more. We're going to have a lot to talk about and a lot to dig into. It's a fun slate.
I might have to change the format a little bit to be able to cover 5 games with like teams playing 3 rotations. We'll have to change the rotation a little bit, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. All right. Well, thanks, Matt. It was great doing a show with you for the first time. I think we're going to be doing plenty more coming up, so I'm excited about that. And thank you to everybody else for watching. This has been NFL Preseason Live Before Lock. Good luck.